The sun shone brightly over the luxurious mansion, reflecting off the ornate windows as I parked my car, an old model that had seen better days. I looked at the suit I was wearing, a gift from Sarah, and tried to convince myself that I was up to the occasion. My heart raced not only because I was in a place that seemed so far removed from my everyday life, but also due to the pressure of representing my daughter on what should be the happiest day of her life. As I entered, I was enveloped by a sea of unfamiliar faces, all impeccably dressed, conversing in a tone that sounded like a soft melody. "Tom, you made it." Sarah's voice echoed in my ears, and her bright eyes made me feel a bit more secure. "You look great, Dad." She hugged me, and in that moment, all my insecurities seemed to fade away. However, what I didn't notice was the way Sarah's in-laws, Richard and Margaret, were watching me from afar. While I tried to blend into the crowd, I caught snippets of their discreet laughter and the disdainful glances they exchanged. My heart sank. "Look who showed up," Richard whispered to Margaret, a sarcastic smile on his face. I turned away, pretending not to hear, but the feeling of being a fish out of water engulfed me once again. Sarah sensed the tension in the air. "Dad, don't pay attention to them. Today is about us, about love." She smiled, but there was a worry in her eyes that I wished didn't exist. "I just want you to be happy, my love," I replied, trying to hide the sadness that consumed me. Taking a deep breath, I decided that I wouldn't let their arrogance ruin my daughter's special day. As the ceremony unfolded, I felt like a shadow, a mere spectator in a show that wasn't mine. I looked at Sarah, so beautiful, radiant in her white dress. My heart swelled with love and pride, and in that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would do my best to be strong, not just for her, but for all the memories we had built together. I knew that, even amidst all the sparkle and glamour, there was a wealth that no mansion could offer: the love we shared. The reception was filled with laughter and music, but I felt like a fish out of water. The elegantly decorated tables, with guests in fine attire, served as a constant reminder of how out of place I was. As people toasted and chatted animatedly, a part of me wanted to disappear. They didn't know my story, didn't understand the struggle I had faced to get here. The pressure was building in my chest, and when someone called me to give a toast, I hesitated. "Tom, come on. You should say a few words." Jake's voice, the groom, was encouraging but sounded distant. I slowly stood up, feeling the curious gazes from all sides. My heart raced, and I didn't know what to say. "It's just a toast," I thought, but anxiety took over me. When I finally managed to open my mouth, the words came out jumbled. I just wanted to say that I'm happy to be here." Richard, the father-in-law, laughed loudly, echoing through the room. "Look at that, the mechanic trying to be eloquent." He mocked me, and I felt the heat of humiliation rising to my head. The laughter of the guests felt like an avalanche, crushing my dignity. Sarah, next to me, looked visibly uncomfortable. Her eyes reflected the pain I was feeling, and that broke my heart. "Tom, don't worry about it. You're amazing in your own way," Miguel, a longtime friend, said, trying to comfort me. His voice was a balm, but insecurity still gnawed at me. He leaned in and whispered, "Remember how you sing? You have a gift, man. Why not sing something? It would liven up the party." The thought of singing made me nervous, but a spark of hope began to stir within me. "Sing? Do you really think I could do that here?" I asked while picturing the judging eyes I would face. Miguel nodded with a glint in his eyes. "You've always been better singing than talking. Go for it. You can do this." I looked around, the faces of the guests blending into a whirlwind of emotions. The voices of Richard and Margaret still echoed in my mind, but something inside me began to stir. What if I fail? What if they laugh at me again? Doubt nestled in my heart, but the memory of my daughter, Sarah, and her joy gave me courage. Maybe I should give it a try, I thought, as the idea of singing took shape in my mind. The party continued to be vibrant, with loud music and laughter echoing throughout the mansion. I watched the dance floor, where guests moved gracefully, their luxurious dresses and impeccable suits shimmering under the bright lights. Yet amid that joy, my heart felt heavy. Sarah, my daughter, was radiant, but I could tell something was bothering her. With a forced smile, she approached me. "Dad, are you okay?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just admiring the party," I replied, trying to hide the sadness in my voice. She didn't seem convinced. "You know you can have fun too, right? Look at everyone dancing," she said, gesturing to the group moving energetically. I hesitated, feeling like a stranger in a place that was supposed to be welcoming. Then, a group of Jake's friends approached, laughing and sharing funny stories about the excesses of the wealthy family. Their loud, animated voices were like knives, cutting even deeper into my spirit. One of them, a blonde guy with an easy smile, started talking about the parties they attended. "And you won't believe how mad Richard got when a bottle of expensive wine broke at his house." He laughed, and everyone around joined in the laughter. I forced a smile, but the discomfort grew. I remembered all the times I worked hard in the shop, the sleepless nights, and the sacrifices I made for Sarah and my wife. I wasn't there to compete with them, but the way they spoke made me feel small, insignificant. Then, an idea began to grow inside me. What did I have to lose? I had always kept a special song tucked away in the back of my mind, a melody that told my story, that spoke of love and overcoming struggles. With my heart racing, I looked at Sarah and said, "I think I'm going to do something different now." "You will?" she asked, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Yes, I will sing," I replied, gathering my courage. The microphone was there, waiting for me. With a determined movement, I stood up from the table, feeling everyone's gaze upon me. The music began to play in the background, and I took the microphone, my hand trembling slightly. Silence settled in the room, and it was at that moment that I realized I had a chance to show who I really was. With the microphone in hand, the tension in the air was palpable. I looked at the audience, feeling their curious and skeptical stares. My heart raced, but something inside me calmed down as I began to sing. The first note rang out, and my voice echoed through the room, powerful and full of emotion. The song I chose was about true love, about the difficulties we face in life, and the strength we can find in relationships. Love is like a river that flows and never ceases. The stones in the path make our rush even stronger. As I sang, I saw the faces transform. The looks of disdain that had been plastered on Richard and Margaret's faces began to fade, giving way to expressions of surprise. The guests, who had been scattered in conversations and laughter, were now standing still, absorbing every word that came from my mouth. The music was more than a performance. It was a declaration of who I am, where I come from, and the love I have for my daughter. When I reached the chorus, tears began to stream down my face. The pride for Sarah and the pain of my journey blended into a single emotion. She was there, her eyes shining, and I knew I was doing this for her. Together, we faced storms. Life is a dance, a constant learning, The silence that filled the room was reverent. It was as if everyone had been hypnotized by my voice. Richard and Margaret, who had previously been laughing at my expense, were now in shock, unable to look away. It was a powerful moment, as if time had stopped. When I finished the song, the thunderous applause that followed took me by surprise. I looked around, seeing the smiling and emotional faces of the guests, and my heart filled with indescribable joy. It was a recognition I had never expected, and for a moment, I completely forgot the disdain I had felt earlier. But at the same time, I noticed Richard and Margaret exchanging nervous glances. The atmosphere in the room had shifted, and I wasn't quite sure what that meant. What I did know was that I had revealed a part of myself that I had always kept hidden, and that in itself was already a victory. As the last note of my song echoed through the hall, a wave of applause erupted, and I felt as if I had been transported to another world. The sparkle in my daughter Sarah's eyes was all I needed to know that, despite Richard and Margaret's disdainful looks, I had managed to touch the hearts of the people present. But just as the euphoria was about to settle in, Richard stood up, his face red with anger. "Oh, that was interesting," he said, trying to undermine the performance. "But let's be honest, what does it really mean? A mechanic singing doesn't make him an artist." The murmurs of disapproval began to grow among the guests. "Shut up, Richard," someone shouted from the back, and I felt my heart race. It was Miguel, my old friend, who had always had the courage to defend those he loves. Others began to speak up as well. "You don't understand anything about what talent is," said a woman I didn't recognize. "He did something truly brave." Meanwhile, my gaze met Sarah's, who was standing with tears in her eyes. She took a deep breath, and in that moment, I knew she was about to speak. The emotion was palpable. "Guys, I need to say something," Sarah began, her voice trembling with sincerity. "My dad is an incredible man. He has always worked hard to give us the best, even when things were tough. You can't measure someone's worth just by what they have. True wealth lies in experiences, love, and courage." Her words reverberated through the room, and I noticed many nodding, touched. Richard fell silent, the anger on his face mingling with confusion. "We've been through so many hardships together," Sarah continued, now with a firmer voice. "My dad taught me that it's essential to fight for our dreams, and that dignity doesn't come from money, but from character. He is my hero." Applause began again, and I felt a wave of pride and gratitude wash over me. The atmosphere had changed completely. The guests started to share their own stories of overcoming, revealing that behind every smile, there was a struggle, a journey. It was as if the party had transformed into a great circle of unity and empathy. Richard, on the other hand, was becoming increasingly furious, his eyes reflecting desperation. But for me, none of that mattered anymore. The celebration of love and redemption was happening, and I finally felt valued, not for material wealth, but for the richness of human connections being formed there. The party was in full swing when I was surrounded by a group of guests wanting to know more about me. I felt a mix of pride and nervousness. Amidst laughter and conversations, I noticed the atmosphere had changed. The music still echoed in the background, but now the focus was on me. "You have a wonderful voice, Tom. Why have you never performed before?" A woman said, her eyes shining. "It's just a hobby, you know. Music has always been a way for me to express how I feel," I replied, trying to stay humble. But before I could continue, Richard appeared, his expression stern. He had always been a man of sharp words, and the disdain he showed toward me was no surprise. "Tom, Do you really think you should have done that? You embarrassed your daughter's family. He shot back, his voice raised. A tense silence fell over the group. The air grew heavy, and I felt all eyes turn toward us. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Richard, I didn't mean to embarrass anyone. I just wanted to share who I am, I replied firmly. But before I could continue, the siren of a police car echoed from outside. I looked out the window and saw a group of officers entering the mansion. Richard turned pale, his arrogance quickly fading away. One of the police officers approached, and to my astonishment, he introduced himself as a detective. Richard, we are here to discuss some financial irregularities. You are under investigation for fraud, he announced in a serious tone. A murmur ran through the room, and the look of disdain Richard had directed at me now turned to fear. Seeing the scene unfold, I felt a mix of relief and compassion. Life has its ways of balancing things, doesn't it? I murmured, more to myself than to anyone else. As Richard attempted to defend himself, I knew it was my time to say goodbye. I looked at Sarah, who was standing next to Jake, and I could see the spark of pride in her eyes. You both deserve all the happiness in the world, I told them, my heart warmed. Always remember what truly matters. I left the party feeling a mix of emotions. The love and dignity I had always sought were there, not in riches, but in the connection I had with my daughter and the moments we shared. True wealth lies in family and love. And on that day, I finally felt recognized for who I truly am.